Namaste and welcome everyone. I hope your week has been a good one. I hope you have felt the love you are being transmitted to all the universe, and that has connected you in a very deep level with all you've come in contact with between last week and this. For sure, know that you are loved and that you are love itself. Last week we did episode 5, so we're going to do episode 6 this week, which falls on the heels of last week's ending of our reading together, which was talking about the role fear plays in our life. I'm going to just continue a little bit more in that vein and then continue on from there. When we have learned that we are loved and demonstrate our character or nature with every one and thing, we can at last know we are indeed one. It is in this oneness that we come at last to fulfill the sacredness of human dignity. Fear, the cleverest and most powerful weapon of the mind, keeps us from our truth, from living authentically and genuinely as the true self we are, from being and acting in the loving spirit. If we can just remember that we are innate essence, love, and not a who, then the fear of not meeting our own or someone else's expectations for who we are or are to become will soon leave us. The same is true for the fear of not gaining another's approval unless we behave in a way suitable to them. This too is comforting to who they want us to be. This too is conforming to who they want us to be. When we dispose of our addiction to external validation, we are rendered as the complete being we already are. The purest of loving for ourselves is attained, and life changes for the better quite dramatically. Fear's close relative, doubt, cleverly disguises itself as the simple questions that seem only to want us to be sure if the decision we have made is really right for us. Doubt is tied to that part of us which fears change, success or failure, prosperity or lack, approval or disapproval, and the many other gifts of universal love just waiting for our acknowledgement and acceptance. Doubt is the seed that sprouts into layers of dark clouds that keep the light of our spirit from shining on the truth for us. Psychotherapist Rollo May's idea is that faith is not moving forward without doubt. Faith is moving forward in spite of doubt. Our mind, not our body, is blind. Our mind, not our body, is crippled. Our mind, not our body, is insane. Our body, not our mind, is dead. We are blind, crippled, insane, and dead only to the degree we permit our mind to let us think it is so. Where is the soul that breathes life into the dead? Where is the soul which inspires, energizes others to action? Where is the soul which provides a fresh perspective to one blinded by hurt, self-pity, or judgmental attitude? Where is the soul that commands the mind to serve these truths? Often great healing takes place when one for the first time discerns the difference between being what one truly is, love, in juxtaposition to one made her himself out to be out of expectation, role definition, or label. What we are never changes. We are the innate essence of love, period. Who we are, which refers only to the roles we play, changes as we or others see fit. We do the accompanying expectations of title and label appended to a particular role. We are relieved of this objectification. To be relieved of this objectification is so freeing and inspires one to act from the center of that freedom. A change of perspective works wonders, even if only as a slight twist from a belief or opinion previously held. The fresh perspective releases all the chaos tied to the old belief, and our belief from the past is greeted with joy and peace in our hearts, found only in the loving present. Perhaps the greatest understanding to come from all this is that no matter what the apparent affliction, at the root of all is the same discontent, a soul blemished or withered by the judgmental attitude. Judgment comes only from feeling that we are separate from others, that we are here and they are over there. Nothing could be further from the truth. How we view life must thus take on a new form, a conversion of attitude to one of oneness and loving spirit. Armed with this knowledge written on our hearts, we can indeed work wonders in the name of love. In this context, the miracle takes on the form of seeing others as they really are, rather than in feeling the need to reform or change others. I am reminded of the definition of judgmental that appeared to me in another setting. The judgmental nature is the need to have all be like you, when all already are me, meaning God. Jesus was a master of healing with love, the only real perspective from which healing can occur. Jesus, the ultimate healer, used the wisdom within to see each person for what he or she actually was, loving essence, at one with all love is, even if they didn't know it themselves. He then discerned what, if any, difficulty each was having by carefully and lovingly listening and observing, the greatest truths of healing known to humankind, but in our society long forgotten and frequently exercised. Through these simple acts of acute observation and sensitive listening, in addition to an extraordinary sensibility to his intuition, Jesus was able to see what afflictions possessed the individual and to determine what attitude of the heart prevailed. Just by listening, many were healed. By guiding each to the threshold of his or her own knowledge of the truth for themselves, many were healed. By serving as a living example of loving spiritually, many more were healed. Jesus indeed was fully aware and lived like one who was. He was sensitive to need, respectful of human dignity, aware of desire, knowledgeable of cause and effect, always in relationship with passionate and compassionate love. And we are the very same when maintaining love's awareness. No difference at all, no separation at all one. Jesus was all of these things primarily because he knew love intimately, and he knew that he and all other beings were one in being, one in this same common essence of love. Where there is no separation seen or felt, oneness is personified. Thus it is not healing that is needed or that has taken place, but rather a restoration to the understanding that we live and have our being in oneness, resplendent in a loving way. At the foundation of how we too perceive life is the understanding we have of what it is we worship, the nature of our gods. Whether our God is a he or she, neither or both, is us in a larger magnitude, a loving or punishing God, some entity to be manipulated for our own purposes, or a fountain of loving energy within all. Typically, we take on an image of God from our relationship with our parents, when as but an infant in a world of gods. As we progress through life and become more aware, we learn the need to shed that projection and to either worship the gods of life external or to go deep within to find our own essence of being and to live with that creation, whatever it may be. If we worship the external gods, we bow in every act to false expectations, objectification of all, collections of good and money, inappropriate uses of power, and the like. On the other hand, if we are truly insightful, we find love's creation, and that spark of an image evolves into an ever-enriching image of love that manifests continually in the form of love's acts, which flow from that being. Our worth is then not determined or earned by what or how much we do. Rather, it is what we are, love's essence, that our worth is lived through all we do. It is said that everything we believe comes from someone else, while everything we truly know comes from within. So it must be in all areas of our lives to find within what we know is our truth, particularly as we search to define the divine. What works increasingly well for me is the vision that love is oneness. My God is love, is not the God of I was or the God of I will be. God is neither the God of the past nor of the future, neither the guilt, regret, and remorse of the past, nor the fear of the past repeating itself as the future. Mine is the God of I am, and in this infinite presentness called eternity, I am one with all beings. This concept has ceased to be a concept at all to me. It has taken on of late a sense of mystery with regards to who I too, in knowing this truth for me, am freed from the guilt and regrets and remorse of yesterday, and the doubts and fears of tomorrow. Increasingly, I come fully to the moment, fully committed to nothing but our common essence of love. Each event, then, is like any other, and as such, with it is no evaluation or judgment whatsoever. Each just is, and each grand moment of now, an event depicting love. That makes us, too, an event, so to speak. Thus we in all our life, in our unity, are one and the same, a sacred event called love, like any other. Life's grace falls upon one and all the same, and renders us free to be and do what we must. How life is delivered to us remains a glorious mystery, or so we think. It actually comes to us by virtue of how we see. I've come to discover that by allowing my mind to absorb all the images of separation that dualism creates, I then live by those same images of separation. If the computer-like bank of information called my mind is dominated by images of separation, then I live by them instead of the images that permit me to see life in all its oneness. Lately, I have been more and more resistant to this separatist approach to the expression of what I am. So much so, in fact, that my throat resists the voicing of the intellect or mind as a true expression of what I am. When I am uppermost in my mind, my voice energy changes dramatically to but a weak semblance of the truth I am, and my general energy level is depleted by the physical and psychic energy it takes to continually maintain this false expression. I have come to the realization that I must show my gratitude to my mind for getting me this far in life, yet frankly and appreciatively ask it to take on a new way with me, to shape its contents now in the truth of my heart, that all I do reflects only that truth. When I remember to slow down and allow my heart to speak the truth it knows, I know also that the mind will eventually use only that truth in complete harmony, and all my actions will then be manifested as the same truth. By this truth, we eliminate the separation of ourselves from all others and things, and loving spiritually establishes itself as our means of being. I actually feel the difference in my voice when I stop to let my heart speak for me. The strength of my truth permeates all I am. The key for me is to allow my heart to speak and to allow my mind to serve the transcendent purpose of interpreting from the truth of what I'm saying. It's like reloading my internal computer so it can use different information for decision making. Just saying I want this to happen is not enough. There's too much resistance yet in my mind, and thus my body, to let it happen fully. Now I declare that I gratefully give up the way of thinking that prohibits my healing, and instead allow the complete merger and healthy balance of mind and heart working for my highest good and for the highest good of all those around me. Excuse me, and I need a little sip. Thank you. This latest episode was actually triggered several years ago when I sensed the need to engage in written dialogues between my heart and mind in order to quell what I felt was a growing imbalance in their relationship. If you sense a similar need, I urge you to try the same exercise by merely writing down the word mind and see what comes out of the pen in its expression. Then the character heart, and let its response express its own truth. Continue until they have finished. You will know by the void that occurs. Repeat this activity as frequently as you feel necessary, but be sure you give it enough time for what you find to be assimilated. Fear not. Just let each be. Truth, like love and light, is its own reward. As we come to see ourselves in this context, we likewise will increasingly come to see that we only have one simple obligation to fulfill, no matter what we think the context: to be passionate lovers in all life is, in celebration of the very life that is us, to be a loving event. Just as a flower gives itself totally and only to its bloom, whether anyone ever sees it or not, we too must give ourselves totally and only to living passionately what we are created to be. However, should others be awake to our expressions of love, they are quickened to further awareness of their own reality as love. They are inspired to live this reality of love instead of laboring under the influences of false demons which blind, cripple, and deaden his or her soul. What an amazing gift to give. Not long ago, a friend came to visit for several days. At the outset, I had no idea she had been repeatedly abused by her father when she was a child. As this fact became apparent, so did certain behaviors in our friend, which became topics of discussion with her during her several-day visit. One topic led to another. Attentive, sensitively listening became the rule. Shoulders were lent to lean on and to share tears upon. Poetic writings on fear were assimilated. A romantic novel shared. In just a few days, out of all this grew a penetrating self-examination and release of much of what our friend was not, and an enlightened acceptance of the beautiful soul she was. Out of this grew an all-night conversation with her deceased father, releasing much of the guilt, regret, shame, and remorse of all the yesteryears, disengaging the massive heartbreak and fear that had shrouded her life of the past. More than likely, even now, many years later, she is not yet completely healed, for that is perhaps a lifelong feat. But at least the demons that had blinded her to a life of true self-love and spiritual living have been exorcised. Her judgmental attitude, which had crippled her relationships with herself and others, came to light, and she now lives her relationship in a much healthier way. Seemingly, the low self-worth which drove her to strive for success via impossible dimensions of self-inflicted work to prove her worth to others is coming to a painful, yet really to a joyous end. Her willingness to tolerate abuse as a form of acknowledgement, perhaps even as a masochistic form of approval or pleasure, is happily disappearing. Of course, our friend spent her whole life getting herself to this point, and had not been fully open to the opportunity, the miracle she gave herself would not have materialized, at least not then, and in that fashion. What remains, however, is that sometimes she will have to face the impending void of her illusions and fixations, which undoubtedly will surface as a feeling of death, somewhat akin to what I earlier described as having happened to me. In the midst of her feeling of living in a metaphorical black hole of death, that nagging sense that life does matter will insist that she continue. In the middle of it all, she simply must remember to persist in order to give herself time to traverse the entire tunnel from her past to her real present, free of illustrations and fixations, and free from the fear that the past will repeat itself and cripple her once again. I'll conclude. No, I think I have. Let's see here. Yes, I think I have time to finish this section. I'll conclude with this story from my own coming home. It begins on an evening of Friday the 13th, January 1995. I have come to view the number 13 as a sacred number, particularly because of its representation of Jesus and the 12 disciples, and because of its designation in the 1 Corinthians 13, the verse describing perfect, whole love. With this story, there is even more reason to view the number 13 as sacred. As the story goes, I, among 38 other men and women from all walks of life, was in the midst of a month-long program to become a spiritual director, held at Pecos Benedictine Monastery in Pecos, New Mexico. It was about 9:45 in the evening at the end of a long but fruitful day. Just moments before I decided to stay on in the lounge for a bit longer, chatting with several classmates while peeling an orange. In walks Rachel, carrying a folded piece of paper, obviously on a mission. She comes directly to me, hands me the note, an outstretched hand, and says, "Here, I've been told to give this to you." "Who's it from?" I inquired. "I've just been told to give it to you. Does it need an answer?" "Nope." And she was gone. I opened the note and I was deeply moved by its contents, but couldn't figure out why Rachel had given it to me. So I refolded it, finished chatting with friends, and went off to bed. Just before returning for the night, I reread the note, searching for the connection. Rachel and I agreed to tell this as our story, so here is what that note said. January 13th, 1995, from Jeffrey. Born July 8th, 1959. Died in a fire July 26th, 1965. Small angel son, I sense your presence with me as I sat before the Blessed Sacrament tonight. I heard the soft rustle of wings and felt the gentle touch of a kiss upon my cheek. Tonight I heard your voice say, "Mama, it's me, Jeff." Abba wanted to send an angel to you to fill your heart with peace and reassure you of his love, and I asked if I could come along. Silent tears had streaked my cheeks, and with quiet gratitude had filled my heart. Now I have missed you, my precious one. How I have missed you. The raw, gaping wound so brutally opened by your parting is long since closed. Only the scar remains. The gift of healing and the grace of acceptance have been given, but the missing doesn't go away, nor does a special love my heart holds for you, and you alone, my firstborn child. What a thoughtful and loving gifts that you have been sent to bring a deeper knowledge of our Father's love. I will not try to hold or capture you. I sense that if I were not able to let you go, then one other than you would have been sent to do the Father's will. I am so grateful for this loving gift, and I praise and thank Abba Father, Brother Jesus, the dear comforting friend Spirit, for granting your request. Stay close, little one, for as long as you are permitted, and though my love for you cannot compare to the love you are now enjoying, please know, dear son, that my heart sings a gentle lullaby of love to you each time I sense your presence, and a glorious hymn of praise to the one who loved us both into being, the one who now sustains me through each moment of my life. I was touched even deeper at this reading, feeling more the pain of my friend Rachel, but I still couldn't make the connection until in a flash. I remembered that my mother, too, had lost her firstborn, also James, by the way, of pneumonia, but a few days after he was born. I thought and prayed about the connection and went to sleep thinking about the mystery that had been solved. How wrong I was. The next morning, our classes focused on healing our inner child, using methods such as drawing, creating mandalas, writing poetry, and the like. As Sister Geraldine made her presentation, I found myself doodling and writing brief phrases of verse. All the while, I could feel something deep inside me moving, but couldn't figure out what was really going on. At the close of the hour, Sister told us to take the next hour to create something we felt needed doing and return to share it with a small group as a way of honoring it. Seizing the moment, I went directly to the chapel, feeling the need for a private, sacred place in which to create my project, in quotes. Little did I know then that my project was me. Just as my backside hit the chair, I spontaneously broke open like an egg, emitting sobs and sobs of tears, agonizing, wailing, "Mom, oh Mom, I am so sorry for your pain. I am so sorry for your pain." Over and over again, over and over. I could not have imagined such pain and sorrow, such depths of grief. Just then, several unexpected guests came into the chapel, so I moved into a small counseling room off the entry to the chapel. Again, as I hit the chair, I broke open, repeating and crying out in pain, only this time even deeper and longer in duration. Although I knew I had felt my mother's pain, I still didn't know what had happened or why, until the verses that came through me began to shape the story, and the drawing reinforced its power of feeling in me. The verse tells its own story. Here's the verse. How could I? Mom, oh Mom, how could I ever know the depth of your pain, the breadth of your loss, from the death of your firstborn, also James? How could I have ever known? How could I? You never told me in any way I could then recognize the burden of such pain. But now, with eyes anew, with vision of heart, I not only know of your pain, I am at one with your pain. Through the pain of the mothers of lost children, God sent an angel and a child, Jeff, age 6, to tell his mother of God's grace upon Jeff's soul and hers. With a message, too, for me. I can hear James, just a few days old, calling to Jeff as he leaves. It's for Jim, too. Tell Jim, too, Jeff. I didn't know, Mom. How could I ever have known? How could I? All the time I felt deep within you wanted me perfect instead of you just wanted me to be alive and safe from harm's way, free from your fear of loss and the pain loss renders. How could I have ever known, Mom? How could I? But now my inner Jimmy and I both know, and in this single loving stroke of reaching from beyond, we all are one at last, united in our pain, the love we are, and understanding that renders forgiveness unnecessary. I love you, Mom. I love you, James. I love you, Jimmy. I love you, Jim. Praise be to God. For the joy I now am, how could I have ever known? How could I? The drawing I completed showed only too dramatically the intermingling of my mother's grief for the loss of James with my own development and with that of my inner child. My mother is holding James and Jimmy in her arms, their figures entwined. I am holding all of them in my loving caress. Life holds us all in its powerfully healing embrace. All are contained in what I at first felt was an egg-shaped seat of my emotions. After soulfully sharing this dramatization with a few of my loving, compassionate classmates, I went off to the men's room. As I opened the door, I thanked God for the beautiful image, and as I did, immediately came into view the large red eclipse that I had drawn, flashing like a neon sign, and the word womb pierced my mind. In an instant, I realized that I had picked up my mother's pain and grief while in her womb, and in the same instant, I knew that same remnants of ill feeling toward my mother had completely disappeared. Talk about a miracle, and it was not yet over. While sharing this story with my support group later that day, one woman said that her mother had a miscarriage, and she always wondered what effect it might have had on her. When I handed a copy of this verse to another, she wept instantly in a recognition that she hadn't completed her grieving process over the loss of one of her own children. Still another was affected similarly when Rachel shared the story with her group. There is no way of knowing how many were touched, but who didn't say anything about it at all. When Stella, one of the group, saw the date I had put on the verse, January 14th, 1995, she said, "I don't normally pay attention to dates and things, but do you know what January 14th is?" I allowed it such that I didn't, except the day after Friday the 13th. She responded with, "Well, that's the date of the New Year in the Hellenic Orthodox Church." "What did you say?" I blurted, astonished by her declaration. "It's the date of the New Year in the Hellenic Orthodox Church," Sheila repeated. "Shit, Stella, I was baptized in the Greek Orthodox Church." "Well then, Happy New Year, Jim," she cheered. "Happy New Year." Indeed. When I shared the entire story with Rachel later in the day, she exclaimed, "You don't know the half of it, Jim. I had an argument with God about giving you the note. God said to give a copy of what I had written in my journal to you, and I said I would feel foolish doing that. You wouldn't have any idea what it was about. God told me once again to do it. I argued once again, saying that you would think I was crazy. God again insisted. I worked out a deal with him, saying that I would agree to take it down to the coffee lounge, and if you were there, I would give it to you. But if you weren't there, that would be a clear sign it wasn't really for you." With my mouth gaping in astonishment, I responded, "Rachel, I was going to leave, but something told me I was supposed to stay a while longer, so I decided to have an orange." "I know," she said, with a wide-eyed smile on her lips and a knowing in her eye. The story of this miracle of healing goes on as my spiritual director worked with me on its meaning in Scripture over the next few weeks, and it continued for better than another year as other circumstances freed yet more for healing. But you get the point. Giving our brokenness to our deeper essence of being results in an outpouring of love through many others in an act of immense proportions as it spreads to all who are willing to accept the gift. Said Jesus, "And even greater works than these you shall do." Greater in this case meaning only more, for the acts are the same, acts of freedom released by love's ways. Or perhaps greater only because more people seem to be giving themselves to this labor of love, and over a longer time than Jesus was given in his human form. Loving is a geometric dimension. The more we give ourselves to love, the more there is to give. By our example, others use their own need to love. Others see their own need to love and do. I can see this one worked on me a little bit. Got a little bit tired on that one. Okay, I'm going to leave you, if you had any emotion about it. I certainly did, as you can tell. But I leave you that experience. We'll go on to the judgmental attitude next week in the next episode. I hope that you have a wonderful week. I feel certain that you will, without question. I'd like to end these sessions with a little post from somewhere. This is one to put where we are in a perspective, where we are in terms of how we're living our lives and what it used to be, how things become so complicated. But let this sort of clear that up for you and let you live through what you really are and only are, love through all you do. This is entitled, "Once Upon a Time." When a window was just a square hole in a room, an application was something written on a paper. When keyboard was a piano, and mouse just an animal. When file was an important office material, and a hard drive was just an uncomfortable road trip. When cut was done with knife, and paste with glue. When web was a spider's home and virus was flu. When apple and blackberry were just fruits. That's when we had a lot of time for family and friends. Take that to heart, my friends. Take that to heart, to give time, a lot of time, for family and friends, expressing the love you are with each one and all. So until next week, my friends, namaste. I love you.